Howdy, travelers. The universe of No Man's Sky is vast and filled with endless possibilities. While most people probably focus on the beautiful landscapes and boundless exploration, I thought we'd look at something else today instead. You see, the multiverse of No Man's Sky is home to as many horrors as it is wonders. The millions of crashed ships, derelict freighters, and ruined settlements across the galaxies are just the tip of the iceberg, the visible remnants. To explore all of these disasters would take more time than either you or I have, so instead I'd like to focus on 5 individual examples of just how terrible a place the universe can be. I'm Kanaju, and these are 5 of the creepiest fates in No Man's Sky. Now, in an effort to avoid spoiling derelict captain's logs, crashed freighter logs, abandoned building terminals, and other interactions you might find while exploring, I'll be sticking to creepy stories that are no longer playable in the game. Spoilers ahead for those, of course, but these aren't anything you'll encounter today, so you should be able to listen worry-free. Still, there are time codes below in case you'd like to skip to the next story at any point. Alright, let's start with number 5, Spheres of Light. We're going to start this list off with a simple story. While tracking the corruption known as the Abyss across the universe back in 2020, many travelers came across what remained of an old appearance modification factory. While found on a Gek planet, the factory was known to shift between worlds in order to avoid detection. At least that's what Tethys told us. The factory's terminal logs recorded the daily operations of the facility and those within. Its workers were multi-species, working together to gather and modify genetic data in order to make convincing replications. However, the logs also recorded that every single one of them was now dead. This wasn't the result of some pirate attack, a wild animal, or sentinels gone rogue. No, their fates were a little stranger than that. You see, combing through the records, it's revealed that the final design they were developing wasn't a traditional alien appearance, but a sphere of pure light itself. Being a holographic appearance modification, this probably seemed like a simple design. However, the workers soon discovered that by creating those holographic spheres, they had doomed themselves. You see, those spheres didn't just replace the appearance of their heads. By some unholy mistake, they replaced their actual skulls. The final interaction with the terminal read, "With these spheres of light had come nightmares." The images seem familiar somehow, like I've seen this face before. Number 4, the Whispering Exosuit. I won't spoil the origins of the exosuit in this video, but you may want to skip to the next story if you know absolutely nothing about them and wish to discover it for yourself. Alright, if you're still here, you probably know that our travelers' exosuits are more than just clothing or armor. The voice we hear when units are received or there are no free slots in suit inventory is more than just a computer alert. Without spoiling too much, our suits have a special artificial intelligence embedded within them that accompanies us on our travels. Laylaps, the friendly companion drone, can often be heard trying to communicate with them. However, the player is never given any indication of this intelligence outside of certain interactions. In August of 2020, however, players were sent to investigate the wreck of a fellow traveler who died under mysterious circumstances. After clearing the corruption around the crashed ship, the logs indicate that the traveler thought they heard voices in the days before the crash. Whispers from their own exosuit, trying to bargain for survival. With whom they were trying to bargain is never revealed. It was said that the traveler was betrayed by an ally, though, someone who gave them up to the Abyss. While the betrayer might be the next entry on this list, stay tuned, I have a sneaking suspicion that the betrayer was the exosuit itself. Gemini also seemed to share my suspicions, as I caught him looking over exosuit schematics and wondering about their origins, such as who speaks through them. The following month, Iteration Tethys asks the traveler if their exosuit has been functioning properly. They tell us, I've been hearing strange noises from my own suit, almost like it's whispering. Number 3, Ariadne. For those who regularly visit the anomaly, you've no doubt passed the strange visage of Ariadne and wondered what the heck they were. Well, the jury's still out on what exactly Ariadne was, but that doesn't really matter, because you see, that's not Ariadne. Back in 2020, when all of this craziness was going down, some of those friendly travelers you meet in the space anomaly, such as, iterations Mercury, Hesperus, and yes, Ariadne, would often disappear, seeking out solutions to the encroaching abyss that was terrorizing the universe at that time. On one of these occasions, Ariadne saw themselves in one of the disturbances, looking back at themselves. Well, they saw themselves seeing themselves too. It's confusing, but they described looking out through two pairs of eyes. While Ariadne's appearance creeped out some travelers, such as Tethys, for me it was their words. After that encounter, they would sometimes use the pronoun we instead of I. If questioned, they said they were referring to both I and like I. Ariadne usually refers to the traveler as like traveler, so it seems they were referring to that other self they had witnessed before. Eventually, though, they decided to seek out the source of the abyss itself, much to the dismay of the other travelers. They did not return. The following week, Ariadne's ship was located, duplicated across space-time on countless worlds. According to the data log, Ariadne escaped the ship before it crashed, so they're still alive somewhere out there. Eventually, they find their way back to the anomaly, with no recollection of having faced the abyss. They tell you that they attempted to find it, but remember only a vast freighter in the darkness of space. They're happy to be back, though. Weeks pass, and travelers continue to deal with these abyssal corruptions across the galaxy. However, not all of them make it home. When Tethys loses contact with a friend of theirs, they send the player to go investigate. The traveler's grave shows evidence that they were killed by a multi-tool while analyzing another site of corruption. After clearing the site, the player discovers that it was Ariadne themselves who murdered the traveler, in cold blood. Hesperus tells us that Ariadne never returned from their ship crash, that instead, the Ariadne who's been sending travelers out on missions is an imposter, and not to trust them. A final investigation reveals Hesperus to be correct. Ariadne survived the crash, only to be banished and replaced by some dark imposter. The Ariadne we see in the anomaly today is that same imposter. Don't believe me? Next time you access a Sentinel pillar, take a look at whose login credentials you're using. You might just be surprised. Number 2. The Stranger. Number 1. Number 16. The Stranger. Number 1. The Stranger. After weeks of trying to track down a lost friend of Polo's back in 2018, the traveler discovers the friend perished in a starship crash, resulting from a Sentinel attack. However, despite being saddened by the news, Polo isn't discouraged. Instead, they're determined to contact the lost friend, but in the past, before they died. After all, in a universe of infinite possibilities, there must be a reality where their friend survives. And this, my friends, is the setup for one of the greatest, most memorable quests in No Man's Sky history. You see, by reaching out to the past, you're able to influence this stranger's actions, and ultimately, their fate. Through various branching paths, you then arrive at one of 16 unique endings. A couple of them are bittersweet, but the majority end poorly. Allow me to share a couple with you now. In every instance, a freighter's bulkheads fail, causing the vessel to explode. The stranger sends a mayday transmission as they attempt to steer the impending wreck. They note half the crew is already dead or missing, and that a Korvax on board gave them this frequency, told them to ask for a specialist. But that's not important right now. At this point, you can either encourage them to try and land at your coordinates, or have them boost towards a black hole for a slingshot maneuver to try and buy them some time. Regardless of your choice though, the ship eventually crash lands on the planet where you're standing. The Korvax is gone, but the stranger and what's left of their crew are now stranded. There's a holographic projection offering them help, a projection of a being with light obscuring their face. If you tell them to follow the projection, they'll follow it to an abandoned building where they soon become plagued by nightmares of a crimson orb, an eye always watching them. If you advise them to ignore it, they'll build a starship out of spare parts in order to survey the surroundings. However, they don't make it far before the improvised ship is forced to land again. At this point, they're exhausted and are beginning to be haunted by visions of a crimson eye watching them. In both instances, You can tell the stranger to rest their heads and sleep, or run for their lives. In every case, they wind up at a portal, though under very different circumstances. The player is then able to witness a recording of their fate, sometimes lasting for years. This isn't a normal recording. In this first ending I'll share with you, the stranger and their crew ended up following that hologram, and they followed it to an abandoned building where you suggested they sleep despite the nightmares and visions. When you find them again, they're standing at the portal, about to activate it. They say, "You, I know you. You told me, dream, to sleep, escape the fog at last. We have followed the eye to our salvation, and we have you to thank. The portal is ready. We stand on the threshold. Is calling us." If you tell them to enter, this is what follows. I hear the familiar drone, the deep chimes of the glyphs. The stranger activates the portal and prepares to step through. I have never heard the moment of transit from the outside before. I do not wish to again. The recording then continues. I see the stranger carve the glyphs into the portal's stone. They step across the threshold, and the blue glow of the portal flashes a deep crimson. A terrifying, otherworldly scream resonates across the entire portal structure. The gateway closes soon after, its connection severed. Any way back closed forever. The recording ends soon after. I always found this ending chilling. Throughout the multi-year saga that spawned all the entries on this list, the portals and knowledge stones were a constant element. However, they were often regarded as dangerous and unpredictable. In Expedition 6, The Blighted, the eponymous pirate faction jerry-rigged a portal to teleport to a specific location. Combine this with the in-game mechanic of invalid portal coordinates, and you soon realize there's a lot more to these structures than meet the eye. The idea that they could be commandeered to send you to a terrible fate is a chilling thought. Back to the stranger though, if you were to tell them not to enter that portal, this would happen instead. "You're right. Of course you're right. Madness. But where next? Where now? We should have just drunk the water." The recording then continues. I see the stranger turn their back on the portal. They are alone, their crew consumed by whatever strange being they met at the abandoned building. Leaving the portal seems to have freed them from whatever strange spell had been haunting their sleep. They stumble, then look around, frantic. The recording shows them retracing their steps, always alone, until they reach the crash site. They build a shelter, keeping vigil for their fallen friends. Suddenly, I hear a noise behind me. I scan the wreck, but see nothing. As I turn back to the terminal, I see the recording has ended. I hate the way this one ends, not only for the stranger who is now alone, of course, but mainly for the uneasiness you get from hearing something behind you, but seeing nothing when you turn around. The same planet that claimed the stranger and their crew isn't safe to stay on. Now, in another reality, where you told the stranger to run for their lives after reaching the abandoned building, they've again reached the portal, only this time in a bid to escape the horrors that haunt them. If you tell them to use the portal, the following occurs. I see the stranger tap tentatively at the portal's control panel. They open the gateway and walk across the threshold. As the foam settles, another being approaches the still active portal. A traveler, their face obscured by a blinding light. They follow the stranger into the portal's blue light. The structure's ancient stone bends and warps, buckling under some extreme force. At last, the traveler reemerges. The portal closes. There is no sign of the stranger. Though this is a recording, I cannot help the feeling that the traveler has noticed me. I close the terminal quickly. This was the ending I originally received, and this is the reason this quest never left my mind. Everything about this ending is unsettling. The traveler with the face obscured, following the stranger through the portal but returning alone, noticing my character through the recording. You can bet your ass I skedaddled off that planet faster than you could say giddy up. I may be up for adventure in No Man's Sky, but not like that. No siree. Now, those are just 3 possible fates for the stranger out of 16. If you're interested in hearing the rest, Let me know. I might do a video on them at a later date. It really was a fascinating quest full of intrigue and player agency, and honestly, we haven't really experienced anything like it since. Although the ending of the last Leviathan expedition does give the player a few decisions to make. But that's it for my list of the 5 or 6 creepiest fates in No Man's Sky. Which one did you find creepiest? Were any of them creepy to you? Maybe none of this creeps you out. But either way, which one would you want to avoid most? And would you be interested in more story and lore focused videos in the future? I think No Man's Sky is some of the most fascinating lore I've ever enjoyed. However, it's spread across hundreds of terminals and data logs, often unseen by most players. It's also quite vague at times, leaving a lot to the player to determine for themselves. In fact, I'd say its storytelling and lore greatly underrated in the mainstream, but then again, I am a massive nerd and fanboy, so I might be a little biased. Regardless, thanks for watching. And by the way, in other news, we just achieved 5,000 followers this week. Woohoo! To celebrate, I posted a subscriber Q&A video where I answer some of the community's questions and end with a little gift to all of y'all. If that sounds interesting to you, or you literally have nothing better to do, it's just a click away. Subscribing isn't necessary to join the celebration, of course, but it is encouraged. Thanks again for supporting my passion for obscure video game topics, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye!